Hello, good morning, everyone. Thank you very much for joining this update session on the data spaces radar, the place for all promising and mature data spaces. My name is Carlos Gonzalez. I am Ecosystem Operations Manager for IDSA, and I'm here alongside my colleagues Shani, Tiran, and Holesch, and we would like to give you a bigger insight on the data spaces radar, its content, and a couple of important use cases that are part of the data spaces radar. So I'd like to go ahead and start. So here is the agenda for the session. So first, we're going to have an introduction to the data spaces radar. So what is the radar all about? What can you find inside of this tool? What does the radar offer you? Why you should bring your data spaces to the radar, and how to be in the spotlight. So being part of the data spaces radar report. And then we're going to have a deep dive into two very important IDS-based use cases. So the quality Mondragon pilot and the artificial intelligence marketplace. Then we're going to have, of course, some space for your questions and a wrap up and call to action. So yeah, also a bit of housekeeping. So yeah, we'd like to remind you that you are in listen only mode. So when we arrive to the Q&A session, Q&A section, if you would like to make a comment, please raise your hand and we will unmute you. And if you would like to ask a question to me and my colleagues during the presentation, you can also put it in the chat, and we will be keeping an eye on this. So this being said, let's deep dive. So the data spaces radar, one of the most important assets of the International Data Spaces Association. So the radar is this tool we have on our website which main objective is to bring visibility to all of those data spaces and use cases based on the IDS standard out there. So a couple of words. So as the mission of the International Data Space Association is to set the IDS standard as a worldwide de facto standard for secure and sovereign data sharing, of course, we need to bring visibility to all of those endeavors that are already adopting and implementing this standard, adopting and implementing the components for secure and sovereign data sharing contained in the reference architecture model, and also the concepts and the values of sovereign data sharing. So we need to bring visibility to all of these endeavors so others can see this as success stories. They can see this as inspiration, but also they can see it as a good example on how to share their data. So the issue in many cases is that companies are sitting in tons of unshared data, and they're not sharing it just because they do not trust or they don't have the right partner to share with, but also because they do not know how to exploit the value from this data. They do not know how they can manage to share it and get the most out of it. So this is why we have the data spaces radar in place, to also set an example to other companies and show them in which way they can share their data based on the standard. So yeah, here we have, and we do not have the use cases only on top of the radar, but we have them categorized. So as you can see here, we have different slices of the cake. So we have the use cases arranged by several domains. So we have, for example, the supply chain domain, smart city, mobility, automotive, etc. And this is so you can go straight to the domain in which you are operating, and you can see what are the other examples. And not just that, but you can also see who to collaborate with. Who from your environment, from your ecosystem is already putting these IDS components into place and sharing data with them. So we have them arranged into domains, but we also have them categorized according to maturity levels. So it's really important to not just have all data spaces endeavors out there on the radar, but to also know which are the most promising endeavors. So we have 4 maturity levels in the radar, and the idea of this is to track the maturity level of each IDS-based use case and data spaces. So we can track the progress, identify the most mature lighthouses, but also that we motivate these endeavors to go for the center of the radar, because the closest to the center of the radar are the highest in maturity. But maybe we can start from the outer layer of the radar, so this lead-in maturity level. So in this case, in this scenario, so a lead-in use case is a business case that's only a rough idea. So this is something that we call a napkin drawing. So you already have the partners in place, the consortium. You already have a rough idea, a rough vision of how you want to share your data, what's the end goal of this data sharing, and you also have in mind the means. So what do you need to share this data? But nothing is really formal, so there is no start date, there is nothing signed, there is no agreement between the parties. This is just in the, let's call it a takeoff stage, so it's just planning. But then we jump to the second maturity level, so business case committed. This is when things start getting real. So you have already a business case, you have a sketch for your architecture, which technology you want to apply, which are the IDS components that you would like to also implement in your use case. You already have a budget, you have a start date for this project, and the partners know the responsibilities. So the project is already started, but still, we do not have a bigger maturity. Speaking specifically or of a bigger technical maturity. So the plan has started, the use cases in the making, but still we still need to get there. And this is when we jump to the third maturity level, pilot. So a pilot, the main characteristic of a pilot use case is when you already have interconnectivity trials. You're already trying, you're already testing that the technology is working for the purpose of data sharing, that the components of your data space are interoperable, that you already have data sharing trials between the partners, but still, this is not quite a market-ready product. So there's still a couple ways to, steps to get there. This is when we get to the highest level of maturity, so live data space. This is when you already you have a market-ready solution, so you have secure and sovereign flows of data going through the data space. So you already have the participants of this data space exchanging data in a secure and sovereign way. Thanks to the IDS-based components, you already have also a website for customers or participants to access this data space. You have already a governance in play, rules for participation, a business model, pricing scheme, and this is already a fully functional solution. So this is where we want all the use cases to aim for them to be live implementations of data spaces. And also maybe to divide it in two sections. So lead-in and case committed are the two initial maturity levels, and as I mentioned, so here there is no need for you to have an implementation of IDS-based components to enter the radar. So if you have a data sharing use case and you are planning to integrate IDS-based components in the future, but you haven't done it yet, you can gladly join the radar within these two levels of maturity, lead-in and in case committed. But then for you to reach the highest maturity level, so pilot and live, of course, you need to now have an implementation of IDS-based components in your use case. So this is, I think, one of the most important determinants for your use case to become a mature IDS-based use case. So this is the anatomy of the data space radar. So as I mentioned, we divide the radar in domains, and we divide this the radar also in maturity levels. So we identify the most promising use cases and data spaces, but most importantly, we motivate all of the entries in the radar to reach for the center of the radar. So this is also why it's important to keep your use cases updated. If there's a breakthrough or an increase in maturity, you need to let us know if you already have a use case in the radar so we can update this information. And now here you have a big picture of the radar, and we are really happy to share with you that we already hit 100 entries in our data spaces radar. So as you can see, we have 61 of them are use cases, and 39 of them are examples of successful data spaces. And as you can see, we have many on the manufacturing domain, so 18, 9 in the smart city domain, 10 in the supply chain domain, 12 in energy, 4 in the automotive domain, and we have 18 mobility, and 39 of them are cross-domain or part of other domains. For example, health, agri-food, cultural domain, etc. So this is really a great milestone to have reached 100 entries in the data spaces radar, and as we will keep mentioning throughout the session, we encourage you to bring your use cases to these data spaces radar. So we really want to keep feeding this radar with more IDS-based use cases and data spaces. And speaking of the content, I will give a couple of examples of some of the use cases that are part of the radar, but I'm not going to deep dive in these use cases. I would like my colleagues Shani and Mario to deep dive in a couple of them in the coming minutes. But first, we have here an example of cross-continental data sharing. So we have the entity testbed on data governance and sovereignty across countries and companies. This is a very special use case with our colleagues from Entity Communication in Japan, and they are setting up this use case with 3 countries participating. So we have flows of secure and sovereign data sharing going from Japan to Switzerland and to Germany. And the idea of this use case is that you can track the CO2 emissions of factories. So you can choose where, as a retailer, where you want your products to be manufactured, depending on the levels of CO2. So you can decide, okay, this plant in X country has the lowest levels of emission. Maybe I can send it here, etc. So this is real-time data on the carbon footprint of manufacturers of factories, and as you can see here, the benefits are that this use case enabled trusted and secure sovereign data sharing across international borders for industries and companies, supports the solutions to major global issues like climate change, and enhances a cooperative and sustainable value creation throughout the supply chain. And as we can see, it already is deploying IDS-based components, which is very important. So this is one example of cross-continental data sharing use case. Then we have the Heraklion data space. So this is also a great example of a data space, and the main aim of this data space is to have more resilient communities. So of course, we all know, we all have the example of how the pandemic really had a huge impact on industry, on daily life, on everything. And the lesson that we can get from the pandemic and from similar crises is that if we had the right data in place beforehand, if we were aware of this, we would have managed the situation in a way more efficient way. So the idea of this, the aim of this data space is to prepare municipalities for the worst, meaning natural disasters or pandemics. And the benefits are that you can have a low threshold low communication threshold for municipal actors thanks to this data space infrastructure. And this data space will also provide analytical methods and simulation tools to make a better use of this data in the event of a crisis. And yeah, so this is the Heraklion data space. And then moving to a more research-oriented scenarios. So we have the eHouse for Data European project. This is a project that I'm part of, and the overall goal of this project is to have a strong network of digital innovation hubs all over Europe, providing digitization services to the sector of small and medium enterprises and startups. So the idea is to build a strong federation of DIAs and to connect them to startups and SMEs, and to provide trainings and to provide services for the digitization of their processes. And doing this also requires huge amounts of data sharing. So the way to do it is to have a common European data space. So this is what the eHouse for Data project is putting in place. So setting up this common European data space to match the SMEs to the DIAs and to have, again, secure and sovereign data sharing. So this is another great example of how IDS-based components are put into place to solve an issue. So these are some of the great examples that we have on our data spaces radar. And then we talk a bit about what's in for me. So as I mentioned before, but really good to have it in a slide for it to be clear. So why should you join your data space radar? First, you increase the visibility for your use case, and you reach a bigger audience within and across your domain. Then, of course, you can get an overview of the use cases in your industry. So you can get nice examples and inspirations from success stories of what's happening in your domain. And then the third point, you can also network with others. So it's not always necessary that you have to create a data space from scratch. Maybe someone is already implementing this solution that can benefit you. So you can just go and join someone else's use case or data space. So it's also good that you are aware of what's happening in your domain, so you can make the most out of it without having to do all the work. So you can definitely network with others, and if you don't join a data space, you can also benefit from each other's experience. And then, most importantly, you can track your path of success. So you can see how others reach your goals, but you can also be measuring and monitoring your progress. And you can, as I mentioned before, we have this maturity level, so it's really good to keep a track of your process and your progress, so you can see where you started, where you came from, and then where you are going. So this highest maturity level, so a live market-ready data space. So I would like to make this call to action, and I'm pretty sure I'm going to repeat it again, but it's really important. So we want you to bring your data space endeavors to the radar. So it's really easy to do it. We have a formula in our website to join the data spaces radar, and after this session, we will also share these slides with you, so you can also check the slides and click the link. So it's a questionnaire. It doesn't take more than 10 minutes, and you provide basic information of your data sharing use case or data space, and depending on the maturity level, you might have to provide more information. And yeah, so you fill in the formula, then we review the information, and if there is nothing to ask you, so no need for feedback or any clarification, we just go ahead and add your data space or use case to the radar. So please, if you have IDS-based use case or data spaces, or you are planning to integrate IDS components to your use cases, we really encourage you to bring your data spaces to the radar. But not just to the radar, but to our data spaces radar report. So this is a quarterly publication that we have just started this year. So the idea of the data spaces radar report is first of all to put the radar on the spotlight, to show you how what's the anatomy of the radar, so what I have just been showing you, what's the aim, what's the objective of this tool, but also most importantly, who is on the radar. So we have on this last iteration 8 different use cases and data spaces, like the mobility data space, like the Catena X, like the smart connected supplier network, and many other impact stories. So we want to have the freshest, the newest, and the most important use cases and data spaces on this quarterly report. And also we have other material of 5 steps how to build data spaces, the data spaces experts, and such. So yeah, if you're already part of the radar, it will be also nice to have you on the next iteration of the data space radar report. So we will definitely we will proceed with the selection of the use cases. We will start working on the next iteration, but you can also let us know if you're interested in forming part of this. Yeah. So be in the lookout for the next of the next iteration of this report. And if you are already meeting us in upcoming events, be there, and we will also would like to share with you a physical versions of this report. And not only this report, but also every two Tuesdays, so bi-weekly, we have this hashtag Data Spaces Tuesday publication on LinkedIn. So this is also a way in which we bring visibility to the use cases on the radar. What we usually have is a view graph showing how the different IDS-based components are implemented in the use case or data space. And we have a couple of paragraphs on the overall idea of this use case and how IDS is implemented as a solution. So maybe you have stumbled upon a couple of these posts in our LinkedIn page. So if you have a use case on the radar and you haven't been featured here, please reach out to me or my colleagues from the marketing team, so Antonia Custer, and let us know that you want to be featured. So yeah, also later in the session, I will put my email in the chat in case you have questions regarding the participation in Data Spaces Tuesday, the data space radar report, or the radar itself. So yeah, we'll also invite you to be on the spotlight here in this Data Spaces Tuesday. So yeah, now we would like to share with you real data spaces and user scenarios, so you can get inspired. So I would like to hand in to my colleagues Mario and Shani. So I will just give them the option to moderate. One second. And it should be working now. So Mario, the stage is yours.
Yeah, 1 second. I'll try to get things running. So you could see the screen already, I hope.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. So we go to presentation mode. Once again, good morning from my side. My name is Mario Holesch. I'm from the adoption team, as well as Carlos. Yeah, and a very warm welcome. Thanks, Carlos, for the presentation and the introduction to the radar. I think it's very impressive every time I see how many use cases, how many data spaces we already have. We now have 100 already reached. That's impressive. And as Carlos just said, we are going to give you a couple of examples, 2 examples of data spaces that we have in the radar, of use cases that we have in the radar, which might inspire you, which might give you an overview of how things are working, how the radar is working. And I'm going to present the AI marketplace to you. The AI marketplace, in fact, is both project and a platform that has derived from this project. It's a German-funded project, which is in fact finishing this year. So on the radar, we are already in the pilot stage. So it's a relatively high maturity level of this platform, of this data space. We are talking about a cross-domain solution, so it might be interesting to you, if you hear about it, I will give you some insights on the AI marketplace, secure and profitable data sharing for AI with data spaces. So within the project, a lot of project partners were working on creating an ecosystem with the right systems that you need in order to provide a marketplace where manufacturers and AI solution providers can come together, can match, and can exchange their data and solutions. And what is the outcome of the whole project is a platform, and this platform is also called AI Marketplace. And let's dig a little bit deeper into that. So Carlos just said on one of his former slides that companies sit on unshared data because oftentimes they do not know how to utilize the data at all. And this is also actually the challenge that was seen in the AI marketplace, where it was said that we live in this very digitized world. We have a lot of manufacturing companies which are creating constantly data, but oftentimes are not utilizing this data at all because either they are not able to do so or they just don't know how to make the most out of all the data that they are actually creating. On the other hand, we have artificial intelligence, we have providers of artificial intelligence, applications, experts on artificial intelligence, and we are actually able to collect a lot of unstructured data, organize it, analyze this data, and provide services on the basis of artificial intelligence. But the thing that is lacking still is the matchmaking of those people who are experts on artificial intelligence, who are working on the applications, who are utilizing the data, and the companies that are creating the data. Oftentimes these companies are not sharing the data at all, and we have researchers or startups who have good systems, who have utilized artificial intelligence in their systems, but they lack data, in fact. So there is a mismatch that they are not coming together, and AI marketplace is in fact a real marketplace where we get this match of AI providers and data providers. And the role of IDS in this case is that we ensure that the marketplace, by connecting it via IDS connectors to the IDS ecosystem, gets part of a secure data space in which all of the stakeholders that I just mentioned, AI experts, solution providers, manufacturing companies, collaboratively can innovate and come up with new AI solutions, but they also get the opportunity to develop new solutions, develop new products, test with the data that is available on the platform. And thanks to the approach that AI Marketplace is connected via an IDS connector, we have this interoperability to all IDS data space that there is. So here you can see on the left side the traditional stakeholder network. So this is what I told you in the beginning. You have companies which are creating data, and you have providers of AI solutions. And the AI marketplace is in fact the place where all of them come together and try to find their right match. And if this match is found, data can be processed in a more efficient way. By connecting the AI marketplace via an IDS connector to the IDS ecosystem, you actually gain the access, or you will gain the access, because we are talking about the future, but the future stakeholder network of the AI marketplace contains all the data endpoints that we have in the IDS ecosystem and all the entities and companies that are in fact connected by an IDS connector and could also utilize the data that is shared in the AI marketplace, but also share the solutions on data processing that they are, for instance, delivering, which is very interesting here because the AI marketplace is a cross-domain solution. So it's not only interesting for the manufacturing companies and for the example that I will share with you on the next slide, but might be interesting across domains. So one example from the AI marketplace and how it's working, and a use case that is actually up and running at the moment, is when you consider a car, and this car is connected with a sensor package. So it's equipped with a lot of sensors, and these sensors send data constantly to a diagnosis service platform. This is happening already via the True Connector, so it's an IDS system, and this data is landing on this diagnosis service platform. It looks like this. If you take a look at the upper part, you can see 4 different colors of the lines. So this is an example where we generate data on 4 cars, and data can be gathered not only on the car model, but also on the duration of a car trip. How long is this car going? Which kind of distance is it taking? How much gas is it consuming? What's the average speed of the trip during this drive? What's the driving style of the driver? And when do engine error codes appear? So with all these data that we have, we know that cars get broken after some time. In some situations, engine error codes appear, and they might be dependent on this data that we see here. So the driving style, the distance, whatsoever, all this data can be collected here, and can in fact be sent from the car that is connected with all these sensors, can be sent to the diagnosis service platform, where the AI experts, startups, whatsoever, can access this data. It's working, as I told you, with the True Connector. The AI processing entities can enrich the data, analyze the data, process the data in a way that it makes sense for them in order to see in how far the engine error codes are connected to what kind of different data and which kind of patterns we can actually derive from that. So we have this diagnosis service platform, and the developers who access here in 3 different ways. So right now the system of the AI marketplace is working that you can connect to it via the IDS connector. You can access it via the I4Trust technology, so via something that is probably similar in the way of what the outcome is, but it's a different technology, and it's not working in the same way as the IDS connector. And as we can see, it's also working via CSV file download, which is a rather static way of how to access the data. So it would be possible in this third case to download annual data of cars and further process this data when you have it in a CSV file, whereas IDS connector data and the data that you can access via I4Trust services are much more dynamic. You can work with live data here, and it's not as static as the data that you just upload and download. However, kind of problem that we see here, or something that is going to be tackled in the future, is the interoperability. So by having 2 systems doing the same, or actually 3 systems doing something that's very similar, and just is dependent on which kind of connector or which kind of system is used in the manufacturing company in this case. There are various payment terms available in order how to access the solutions that are provided by the AI provider. There's a possibility to access the service that is provided by the AI expert or service provider or processor, or however we want to call him, via these 3 different ways. So the developer at the automotive supplier or a second-hand car platform can access with their specific connection service the data and process the service, which looks like this when we have a screenshot of the AI marketplace, the different offerings of the process data of the services of the AI providers. So how is it working overall? With the IDS, you can connect to the AI marketplace via the IDS True Connector by Fireware. In terms of I4 Trust, you can access via the iShare mechanisms and the technology. And in terms of JSON, you can, as I told you, just directly download the data from the platform. So this is an example of AI marketplace, how it's working, and the specific use case of the cars that are connected with their sensors. One last slide, and I hope this was a good example for you, and you can see how this use case is placed in the radar. And yeah, we are eager to see how this data space, how this use case is reaching the next maturity stage. And yeah, if you're interested in this project, if you have any questions, you can ask them afterwards. Otherwise, you can write an email to me. But that's everything from my side. And this was one of the two use cases we are going to present to you. And now my colleague Shani is going to present a second one.
Hi, thank you, Mario. And good morning to everybody. I'm also very happy to join you here today. My name is Shani Tiran. I work alongside Mario and Carlos in the adoption team in IDSA. And I will zoom in on a specific use case that comes from the quality project. Now, in a few words about the quality project, for those who don't know, it's a research and development project in the EU that actually started in 2019 and ended last year. And it revolved around the context of manufacturing. And specifically, how can we boost zero defect manufacturing and autonomous quality in this day and age of Industry 4.0? The consortium had 45 members from 13 countries, and they worked on a variety of different pilots, 14 different pilots. And we are going to do a very specific zoom into one of those pilots that comes from the Mondragon municipality in the Basque Country in Spain. So, and Mario, if you can move to the next slide. So a little bit about this use case. So the Mondragon pilot, the challenge that the Mondragon pilot wanted to tackle comes from the perspective of the factory owners. So the factory owners can handle most of the times on their own the ongoing production data analysis, everything they need for their ongoing production analysis. But when it comes to anomaly detection analysis, this is something that usually they require expertise from outside. They will require third-party experts because this is a very highly specialized field that requires certain expertise and certain algorithms to make use of. And anomaly detection analysis is really important component when we talk about trying to reach this paradigm, this ambitious paradigm of zero defect manufacturing, because it allows us to pinpoint faults in production, really zoom in and find the right faults. It can minimize failures, and it can really help us reduce waste and get to this point of a better final product. So with this need to rely on third-party experts, the factory owners find themselves in a really big problem of trust, basically. How can I ensure that this data, which is actually the most sensitive data that, in a sense, that these factory owners have, how can I ensure that I share it with the right specific company that I wanted to share it with? And how can I ensure that it is used only under my terms, for my purposes, for the goal of anomaly detection and nothing else? And how can I really still keep control of this data? And the solution that they chose is really using the IDS approach, as it can ensure that this data is only used by the desired company, and while agreeing to the terms established in the contract. And next slide, please. And if we move to the next slide, we can see that this is the heart of the matter in this project. I mean, the main reason to use the IDS approach, we're talking about exchange of data between two parties, but the main reason to use the IDS approach is because the ability to have data usage control. and the importance of using usage control policies. So what do we mean by that? A lot of time when we talk about sharing data, we really focus on the first part of access control. When I share data, who am I giving access? Who do I provide this data to? But this really, if you look at it in a time scale, this really only deals with the past and the present. So before I didn't share the data with this second party, and in the present here now he has the data shared, access to this data. And what we are talking about when we talk about usage control is actually kind of an extension of this access control. So what are the future usages in this data? I gave you access, but what are your obligations when using this data? And really what the IDS approach allows you to do is specify really in detail your specific obligations in using the data. And these are just two examples. For example, you can specify that the second party have to delete the data after 3 days, that they cannot forward this data, and that means that way you can ensure that it is only used for your specific reasons and under your specific terms. Next slide, please. And we can really see it in this illustration. It's a very simple illustration of how does it look like in real life. So what we can see on the left-hand side here and on the bottom of the screen, we can see the different processes that the factory owner has. It could be 1, 2, or as many processes as he has. And the factory owner collects his own data from these processes. And this is where you can see the message management platform. All these data funnels from the industrial processes to the message management platform in the form of messages. Where the factory owner, this is his own realm. He can have his own ongoing production analysis. You can see here that he has his own visualization tool and so on. And from that, he can decide which of these messages do I want to funnel into my external service provider, the data analysis expert. 1 message, 2 message, blocks of messages over a certain period of time, and so on. And what are my terms for actually giving him access to these messages and usage? And this is done, and this is where you can see the IDS logo. This is a way to visualize or to simplify it, simply explain that this is done via the IDS connector, where all those different usage control properties are being encapsulated in the IDS connector, and only when both sides agree to the terms, then the data is funneled into the service provider, which then in his turn can do his own data analysis, the anomaly detection, and provide back and funnel back the results to the factory owner. And if we move to the last slide, in this use case, we can actually see that this was done in 2 applications. One is for hot stamping process, and one is for railway axle production lines. And you can see here the list of partners that took part in it. They actually used Mondragon, developed their own connector, and you can also find it in the connector report for this use case. And it really demonstrates the main, as I said, the main point of this use case. It really demonstrates the ability to stay sovereign on your own data and mitigate trust issues between unknown partners, as we know, 2 really important building blocks in the idea of data spaces. And if this subject is interesting to you, just before I wrap up, I will say that you have these little 2 barcodes below. This is the one time you can take out your cell phone and take a picture. There's a video that explains a bit more in detail those 2 applications in specific detail and how the whole process works. And if you want to know more, this, other than being in the IDSA radar, this project was also mentioned in an IDSI, which is the IDS Industrial Community position paper that has a lot of different scenarios around manufacturing and how can you leverage data spaces in manufacturing. And this is one of the scenarios described there. So it's a good read if you're interested in more use cases in the manufacturing industry. And with that, I think I can move it back to Carlos, and we can have some time for questions.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mario and Shani, for this great presentation. So yeah, it's definitely really interesting to deep dive on these use cases and to see how they have, especially so this. We have two perspectives. So we have the first perspective of the artificial intelligence marketplace. That's it's an ongoing project, and they are yet to reach a higher maturity level, but they are already thinking of putting IDS technology in place. And now we have this second perspective of the Mondragon pilot in quality, which is already a finished project, and we can see how this turned out successfully. So it's great to deep dive into this a couple of success stories that are within the radar. So I'm just gonna change to my screen, and should be working now. So excellent. So just to kind of summarize until now, so we have had a deep dive on the data spaces radar, on its anatomy, on what's inside the radar, what's in for you for when you bring your use cases, and how you can put them on the spotlight. So I think until now it's been a really information-packed agenda. So I would like to now, I think my colleagues and I have been speaking for a while, so I would like to now give the floor to you, the participants. So if you have any question regarding the data space radar or how to be part of it, or the use cases that we have presented, just feel free to raise your hand or put your question in the chat, and we will answer it. So I think I will just stop sharing and just start taking a look at the chat. So I see Ricardo Giovanotti, you raise your hand, so let me unmute you. So 1 second. Oh, should be here. You should be able to speak now, Ricardo. Apparently not. Let me. Something's not working with the platform. Let me try again, and if you're not able to speak in a bit, you can also put your question in the chat. But I'm just gonna go ahead and stop the so you should all be able to speak now. You just have to unmute yourself. So Ricardo, you can go ahead and unmute yourself and raise your question.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes. Good morning, Ricardo.
Okay, great. Thank you. Good morning, and thanks for this update. Really interesting and promising as well. Just a question. We already spoke somehow in the past. I represent the Global Data Service Organization for Tires and Automotive Components, so GDSO, and we are live. We are a data space. We are live. So really, at the center of the radar potentially, but not in your radar yet. Why? Because as you were saying, it took some time for different organizations, but also for the International Data Space Agency to create the rule book, to move forward and so on. And we were really working in parallel. So we were not aware about your job. You were not aware about us. So we went live while you were releasing the rule book and so on. So my question is going straight forward to the point. I'm already filling in the questionnaire to submit as a potential data space to be listed, but how much is it binding to adopt one of the standard or component of the IDS to be reported over there. We are in the automotive sector, and I saw someone like Catena X reported there. They are still at the early stage, if I well understood the radar approach. So they're not very close to the center, while we are really pointing in the center because we are live since 1 year. So my point is, how can we work together in a way to be reported on the radar, to be reported as a live data space? And if, for example, we can have a deep dive and having a kind of audit from each of you to understand what part is missing to be really reported over there, or if we already, despite not having implemented any component of the IDS, can we already be there? Is my question clear?
Yeah, totally clear, and that's a great question. It's first of all, thanks that you're sharing this information with us, because one thing that happens often is that we are not really aware of these mature endeavors out there, because sometimes there's we just don't hear the news from endeavors like yours, and it's really a nice surprise to just out of a sudden realize that there's a really mature endeavor that has been following what we were doing, or maybe not following directly, but they've been working in a parallel way, just like you're saying. So thanks for sharing this. So yeah, in fact, we get this question because there are currently also many data spaces that are in a really mature stage, but they are not necessarily implementing IDS-based components, but they are definitely already covering other requirements to achieve this live maturity level. But yeah, so this is a good example that you mentioned with Catena. So what you will certainly need, even if your solution is already pretty mature in the rest of the requirements. So you're like I mentioned, so you already have a market-ready solution. You have a website and access for the participants of the data space to enter it, and a clear business model, pricing scheme, etc. But I think the only thing that will be lacking will be these IDS-based components. So first, I will suggest that you can not just take a look to the reference architecture model, which will also be really useful, but if you want to save some time, you can just go directly to this document we have on our website, and I think my colleagues Mario and Shani can put the link in the chat. This is the data connector report. So we have many components within a data space based on the reference architecture model that are really important for this secure and sovereign data sharing. But the most important, we will say, is the data connector. So when I started working here a year and a half ago, we only had 3 or 4 implementations of the connector, but now we have around 24. And this is why we decided to have a monthly issue of this document. So here we have all of the connectors out there that are based on this standard, and most of them are open source. So you can just go to the repositories, check out the documentation, and develop your own connector based on this. Some of them are proprietary, so you need to pay for the service, or they are not even out in the market as a product, but this is only a small amount of them. So in this data connector report, you have access to all of this information, and you can just choose the one that meets your necessities in your data space, and you can start implementing it. And not just the connector, but there's, as I mentioned, the rest of the components. So the identity provider, app store, metadata broker, clearinghouse, etc. So my advice will be take a look at this documentation and see which components you can start implementing. So it's not a need, and this will be my second suggestion. Maybe we can also have a bilateral talk in the upcoming days, maybe with also some colleagues from our technical team or some other experts, so they can maybe give you a bit more orientation. But it's not necessary that you deploy all of the components of a data space in your data space. It depends totally on the needs of your data space. So what type of data you're sharing? Is it cross-domain? Is it just within the automotive domain that you just mentioned? So this is totally up to you and your needs. So we can also have a bilateral exchange. So I will put my email in the chat, so we can discuss what you need to be featured on a higher maturity level on the radar. But nonetheless, we are really glad if you fill in the form, and we can check more detailed information on your data space. And yeah, we are more than happy to have it on the radar. So hopefully this was a useful answer. Okay, so I'm putting my email in the chat. But yeah, if anyone else has a question, I see a raised hand. Feel free to unmute yourself and just share it with us.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yeah, good morning, Edith.
Good morning. Hello. Thank you for a very interesting presentation. Now we are in a very early stage of our project and playing around with the IDS test bed. And now I'm wondering, because a lot of persons have worked together to make all these interesting software and components and so on. And when we run into technical problems, who could we contact?
Yeah, that's a great question. First of all, really happy that you're already implementing a testbed, and we will definitely like to know more about it. Especially, we are building also, same as we have the data connector report. We're working on a landscape to know all the testbeds out there, and my colleague Shani is responsible for this. So it will also be great if you can maybe reach out to us so we can know more about your testbed. But yes, so. We have many, so either from our technical team, we can provide support if you are encountering trouble with, I don't know if the trouble you have is from the very beginning with the installation and deployment, or is it you already are working with it?
It's rather in the certifications and in the authorities and these things.
Okay, so yeah, feel free. So I put my email in the chat. Feel free to send me a message, and maybe you can explain a bit more in a couple lines what your problem is, and then we can see if we should connect you directly to colleagues from our tech team. So colleagues directly responsible for the testbed within IDSA, or we also have some other implementation partners or colleagues from our hub facilitators that are already implementing a testbed and even offering it to their ecosystems as a service, or as just a publicly offering. So maybe they should be able to lend you a hand. So just reach out to us and we can connect you to someone that can support you.
Okay, great. Then I will write you an email and explaining our situation. Thanks a lot.
Oh, thank you. Perfect. Okay, so and I see that yeah, I'm sorry, Haluk, Namis, you have a question in the chat, but I haven't answered. So we will share the presentations afterwards. Is there any list of partners that help you integrate SMEs to IDSA? And thanks, my email. Oh, and Ricardo, you shared your email. Perfect. So I will follow up with you, Ricardo, with the email. And to your question, Haluk, yes, there's a list of partners that help you get onboarded and into the IDS standard, and also to integrate you as an SME in the data space ecosystem. So maybe also my colleagues Shani and Mario can put the link to the implementation partners in the chat, so you can maybe take a look at it in our website. So a couple words on these implementation partners. So they are already experts on data spaces, either from the technical side or the business side, or even sometimes the legal dimension. And they offer several services to SMEs to get them onboarded on data spaces, because it's a really complex topic. So the idea is they give you an introduction, they onboard you, they can provide sometimes trainings, or they can provide consultancy services based on IDS and data spaces. They can also provide the components as a service, etc. So also feel free to reach out to me on an email, and we can see which implementation partner can be the right match for your situation. So yeah, and feel free to check it. I see that my colleague Shani already put the link. So yeah, we have these implementation partners there. Okay, so maybe just one quick check if there's any question or not, and if not, since I see that we are running out of time, but maybe not the case. Okay, so with this, I would like to close the session, and I would like to thank all of you again for attending this. I think this was a great session, and thank you very much for your questions. And remember, you can reach out to us whenever you need more information or support. And I would like to wish all of you a really relaxing and long weekend. So thanks a lot, and see you next time. Bye-bye.